At 4 o'clock in the morning, inside the quiet halls of Vance Dynamics, a $1 million facility sat in complete darkness. Production was completely halted, costing $30,000 every minute. 12 elite chief engineers had already signed off on the death warrant of Machine 7, calling it dead. But in the dim shadows beneath the massive steel casing, a young black intern named Marcus held a flickering torch. Marcus was not supposed to be touching the machinery. Assigned to sweep floors and fetch coffee, the 23-year-old top MIT graduate had spent months being systematically ignored by senior staff. They viewed him as nothing more than temporary help. Yet while the high-paid executives slept in luxury, Marcus sat crouched on the cold concrete floor, analyzing complex blueprints that others deemed far too complicated. The company stood to lose $40 million if Machine 7 remained offline past dawn. The elite team of engineers insisted the master control board was permanently fried, recommending an immediate multi-million-dollar replacement that would take 3 months to arrive. But Marcus noticed something subtle that 12 veteran specialists had completely overlooked. Was it pure negligence, or was something far more sinister happening behind closed doors? Across town in a penthouse suite, Billionaire founder Arthur Vance received an urgent call. His plant manager claimed the main line was beyond repair and urged him to approve an emergency purchase order. Arthur, who built his vast technological empire from a humble garage, felt a pit in his stomach. Something about the sudden shutdown felt deeply wrong, prompting him to dress quickly and head out. All 12 chief engineers had signed their names on the final scrap document, declaring Machine 7 beyond recovery. They claimed the central processor had suffered a catastrophic voltage surge. However, Marcus held a worn multimeter in his hand that told a completely different story. The processor was fine, but a subtle bypass valve had been deliberately twisted out of alignment. Someone wanted this machine dead. Marcus sneaked into the dimly lit lab using his late-night janitorial clearance card. Equipped with nothing more than his grandfather's vintage toolkit and a handwritten notebook, he began disassembling the primary manifold. He knew that if security caught him altering executive equipment, he would face immediate termination and criminal charges. Yet his devotion to the truth forced him to press forward anyway. Earlier that afternoon, Marcus had attempted to point out the minor anomaly to lead engineer Bradley. Bradley had laughed in his face, tossing a filthy mop bucket toward Marcus while sneering, "Know your place, boy. You are here to clean floors, not teach men with master degrees how to do real work." That cruel rejection sparked a burning fire inside the brilliant young engineer. Bradley had even threatened to revoke Marcus's badge if he ever touched the diagnostic computer again. But Marcus knew that silence in the face of destruction was cowardice. As the clock ticked past 4:15 a.m., Marcus unspooled a small spool of 50-cent copper wire. He calculated that this tiny component could bridge the intentionally severed trace and restore power to the entire line. Meanwhile, Arthur Vance arrived at the sprawling complex without alerting security guards. It was Arthur's private habit to visit his factories unannounced during late hours to feel connected to the heartbeat of his business. Walking down the silent, polished corridors, he expected to find a completely deserted assembly room. Instead, he noticed a faint orange light flickering inside Sector 4. Arthur crept along the catwalk overlooking the production floor, moving like a phantom. He heard the distinct metallic clinking of tools echoing against the high steel rafters. Peering into the belly of the massive $2 million machine, Arthur saw a young man drenched in sweat, working feverishly under the glow of a small LED clip light. The billionaire paused, thoroughly confused by the sight. Arthur quietly pushed open the heavy steel access door, his expensive leather shoes stepping silently onto the polished concrete. Marcus was half buried inside the turbine housing, completely unaware that the company's owner was standing just 6 feet away. Arthur cleared his throat, his deep voice slicing through the silence. "What exactly do you think you are doing to my machine at 4 in the morning?" Marcus startled, dropping his screwdriver with a loud clang against the frame. He wiped grease from his forehead and slowly turned around, expecting to see security officers ready to drag him away. Recognizing the stern face of Arthur Vance from posters hanging throughout the corporate headquarters, Marcus stood tall, taking a calm breath despite his racing heart. "Sir, I can explain," Marcus said clearly, meeting Arthur's sharp gaze without flinching. "Your senior engineers made a severe diagnostic error. Or perhaps they made no error at all and lied to you. Machine 7 isn't dead. It has a microscopic thermal fracture in the secondary relay that was deliberately triggered to disable the main generator. Arthur gasped softly at the audacity. Arthur walked closer, crossing his arms with an intense expression. 12 top engineers with doctorates signed a certified report declaring this unit total scrap. You are an intern who sweeps the floors. Why should I believe your word over theirs? Marcus did not blink. Instead, he held out his handwritten notebook containing precise mathematical calculations and thermal readings. Marcus picked up his 50-cent copper wire, attaching it meticulously across two small terminals on the master control board. Watch the diagnostic display, Mr. Vance, Marcus whispered softly. He flipped the manual circuit breaker. Suddenly, the dead machine emitted a deep hum, and its digital screen flickered back to life, displaying stable current levels across every channel. Arthur stared at the glowing green indicators in disbelief. A system that 12 highly paid experts swore was unsalvageable had just been revived in less than 30 minutes by an ignored floor cleaner using a tiny piece of copper wire. Arthur stepped forward, his tone shifting from suspicion to profound intrigue. How did you spot this when 12 chief engineers missed it? They didn't miss it, sir, Marcus replied gravely, pulling a crumpled document from his pocket. They skipped basic diagnostic protocol because fixing it didn't benefit them. In fact, lead engineer Bradley threatened to fire me this afternoon when I pointed out the relay mismatch. He told me that intern trash had no right questioning men who hold company shares. Arthur took the paper and unfolded it under the harsh fluorescent light. It was the original scrap authorization order. Arthur noticed a small corporate logo stamped on the bottom corner, a third-party equipment refurbishing firm. A sudden, terrifying realization washed over the billionaire owner. The engineers weren't just incompetent, they were running a massive fraud operation. Marcus explained the scheme clearly. When a machine is marked as total loss, it gets sold to a salvage contractor for pennies on the dollar. But that contractor is secretly owned by lead engineer Bradley. They repair the unit with 50 cents of wire and resell it to another facility for millions. They've been robbing your company from the inside out. Arthur felt a cold anger surging through his veins. Millions of dollars had been stolen, and his plant's productivity had been systematically sabotaged for years. He looked at Marcus with newfound respect. You knew you could get fired or arrested for being here tonight. Why did you risk everything just to fix a machine that doesn't belong to you? Marcus looked down at his old toolkit, his eyes glistening with pride. My grandfather was a mechanic who never got a college degree, but he taught me that honest work is sacred. He told me that if you have the skill to fix something broken and you choose to walk away, you become part of the lie. I couldn't let them ruin this plant. Arthur touched Marcus's shoulder warmly. Your grandfather was a wise man, Marcus. And you possess something far more valuable than a dozen fancy diplomas. You have uncompromising integrity. Arthur glanced at his watch. It was 5 a.m. The senior shift was scheduled to arrive in 3 hours. Arthur smiled grimly as a master trap formed in his mind. Here is what we are going to do, Arthur instructed quietly. Power the machine back down and disconnect your bypass wire. Leave it looking as dead as it was when they left last night. We are going to let them put on their little show at dawn, and then we will destroy them. Marcus nodded eagerly, agreeing to the plan. For the next 2 hours, Arthur stayed in Sector 4 with Marcus. Instead of remaining in his executive office, the billionaire sat on an overturned plastic crate, listening attentively as Marcus explained complex system improvements that could save the factory millions annually. Arthur was astonished by the depth of knowledge this young man possessed while being forced to sweep floors. As dawn broke over the city, workers began streaming into the facility. Arthur hid inside the glass control booth on the upper mezzanine, where he could view the main assembly floor through tinted one-way glass. Marcus returned to his janitorial closet, put on his heavy work gloves, and grabbed his mop bucket, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. At exactly 7:55 a.m., lead engineer Bradley walked onto the floor holding a fresh cup of coffee, accompanied by 11 senior engineering specialists. They were laughing casually, discussing how they planned to spend their upcoming kickback checks from the salvage company once the scrap paperwork was officially processed by Human Resources later that morning. Bradley spotted Marcus mopping near Machine 7 and immediately sneered with disdain. "Hey! Mop boy!" Bradley shouted, his voice echoing across the wide room. "Didn't I tell you to keep your filthy hands off this sector? Get your trash bucket out of here before I have security throw you onto the street for good." Marcus paused his mopping and met Bradley's gaze calmly. "I was just finishing cleaning the perimeter, Mr. Bradley. I noticed the control panel was offline and thought maybe we should double-check the secondary relay before writing off a $2 million asset." The 11 other engineers burst into obnoxious, mocking laughter at Marcus's suggestion. "Double-check the relay?" Bradley cackled, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Listen to the intern. He thinks his community college mind knows better than 12 chief engineers with 30 years of experience. The board is incinerated, kid. It is absolute trash. Now pick up your bucket and get out of my sight before I ruin your career forever." At that exact moment, the heavy metal doors of the upper mezzanine burst open. Arthur Vance stepped out onto the iron balcony, his commanding voice thunderous and cold. "Is that how you treat my equipment, Bradley? Or is that how you treat true genius when it threatens your lucrative little scam?" The entire facility instantly fell dead silent. Bradley froze in horror, his coffee cup trembling in his hands as he looked up to see the company's owner glaring down at him. "Mr. Vance," Bradley stammered, his face turning ghost white. We didn't expect you here so early. We were just maintaining order." This in turn was tampering with broken machinery without authorization. Arthur slowly walked down the metal spiral staircase, his gaze locked onto Bradley. "You said the machine was completely dead, Bradley. You signed a certified document claiming it would cost $2 million to replace and take 3 months. Is that correct?" Bradley swallowed hard, nodding frantically. "Yes sir, completely dead. Unsalvageable scrap." Arthur walked up to Machine 7, reached into his jacket, and pulled out the tiny 50-cent copper wire Marcus had crafted earlier. He plugged it back into the board right before Bradley's eyes and slammed down the main breaker switch. Instantly, Machine 7 roared to life, its turbines spinning with flawless, perfect precision. The operational display lit up vibrant green, showing 100 efficiency across all systems. The entire factory floor broke out into quiet whispers as the 11 senior engineers stared in absolute shock. Bradley's jaw dropped, his mind racing as he realized his elaborate scheme had been shattered in a matter of seconds. "This young man fixed your dead machine in 20 minutes using 50 cents of copper wire," Arthur said, his voice dripping with righteous fury. "So tell me, Bradley, are you and your 11 friends completely incompetent at your jobs, or are you common thieves stealing from my company?" Bradley desperately tried to pivot, pointing a shaking finger at Marcus. "He sabotaged it. He must have altered the system overnight just to make us look bad. Mr. Vance, you can't trust this janitor over your senior management team." The 11 other engineers began nodding frantically, trying to shield themselves behind Bradley's lie. Arthur pulled out a small black audio recorder from his pocket and pressed play. A crystal-clear recording of Bradley's voice filled the speaker. "Make sure the scrap paper lists full board burnout. The salvage buyer is paying us 50 grand each once Vance approves the replacement order." Panic swept through the group of 12 corrupt men. The main security doors opened once more, and 6 federal agents alongside corporate security guards marched onto the floor. Arthur had called them at 5:30 a.m. while sitting on the crate with Marcus. "Bradley, you and your accomplices are under arrest for corporate espionage, grand larceny, and conspiracy," the lead agent announced sternly. Security guards immediately stepped forward, stripping the ID badges from the shirts of all 12 chief engineers. Bradley tried to speak, but an officer snapped handcuffs onto his wrists, pulling him toward the exit. The entire factory watched in awe as the 12 men who had ruled the plant with arrogance were led away in shame. As Bradley passed Marcus, he glared with utter hatred, but Marcus simply stood tall, holding his mop with dignity. Arthur Vance stepped up to the public address microphone mounted on the central pillar, turning it on so his voice echoed through every sector of the massive plant complex. Effective immediately, Arthur announced boldly, lead engineer Bradley and his team have been terminated for cause. Furthermore, Advanced Dynamics is undergoing an immediate structural reorganization. We will no longer value arrogance and fancy titles over true talent, hard work, and unyielding integrity. Arthur walked over to Marcus, taking the mop out of his hands and handing it to a nearby assistant. Marcus, step forward, Arthur commanded warmly. Marcus walked to the center stage beneath the bright factory lights, unsure of what was about to happen next as hundreds of eyes locked onto him. As of this morning, Arthur declared into the microphone, Marcus is appointed as Chief Systems Architect of Advanced Dynamics. He will receive a starting salary of $700,000, full executive equity, and total authority to rebuild our engineering department from the ground up. The entire assembly room erupted into thunderous applause. Hard-working floor operators, mechanics, and junior technicians cheered wildly, knowing that one of their own, someone who truly understood the machines and respected the staff, had been elevated to lead them. Marcus felt tears well up in his eyes, but he wiped them away with a proud smile. He looked at Arthur and said into the microphone, my first official act as chief architect is to promote every junior technician on the night shift who was previously passed over for promotion. Skill belongs on the front lines. News of the incident broke across global financial networks by midday. Stock in Advanced Dynamics surged 15% as investors praised the company's swift action against corruption and its bold move to place genuine technical talent at the helm of operations. Bradley and his co-conspirators attempted to sue the company for wrongful termination and illegal wiretapping, but federal prosecutors quickly filed 34 counts of felony fraud against them. Facing overwhelming audio and digital evidence, all 12 men eventually pled guilty, receiving lengthy prison sentences. During a routine audit of Bradley's former office, Marcus uncovered a hidden hard drive containing records of 5 other brick machines Advanced Dynamics facilities across the country. Bradley had been planning to execute the exact same multi-million-dollar salvage fraud at every single location. Arthur immediately ordered his private jet prepared. Over the next 48 hours, Arthur and Marcus flew to all 5 national plants. At each stop, Marcus personally trained local technicians on how to spot intentional sabotage and perform real-time diagnostic repairs, saving the company over $20 million. A rival technology conglomerate, stunned by Marcus's rapid rise in genius diagnostic abilities, secretly offered him a $10 million contract to leave Advanced Dynamics and join their firm. It was an astronomical sum that could change his family's financial standing for generations. Marcus firmly rejected the rival offer without a second thought. Arthur Vance gave me a chance when everyone else saw me as just a guy with a mop, Marcus told the headhunter. Loyalty isn't bought with a bigger check, it is earned through respect and character. Instead of spending his new wealth on lavish mansions or luxury sports cars, Marcus established the Marcus Engineering Foundation. The charity provided full university scholarships, modern tools, and mentorship programs to brilliant underprivileged students who were overlooked by traditional academic channels. 1 year later, a special ceremony was held inside Sector 4. Mounted directly onto the front frame of Machine 7 was a gleaming bronze plaque. It read, dedicated to honesty, skill, and integrity. Fixed by 50 cents of wire and an unyielding commitment to truth. At the anniversary banquet, Arthur Vance stood beside Marcus and presented him with a signed partner agreement, making Marcus a vice president and minority owner of Advanced Dynamics. Arthur declared, investing in Marcus was the single best decision of my entire executive career. Marcus took the stage to address thousands of employees. He looked down at the floor where he had once stood with a mop bucket just 12 months earlier. Never let anyone define your worth by the uniform you wear or the title you hold, Marcus proclaimed passionately. True excellence is shown when nobody is watching, Marcus continued. When you work with pride and stay loyal to the truth, your work will eventually speak so loudly that no arrogant voice can ever drown you out again. The crowd erupted into a long-standing ovation. Late that night at 4 a.m., Arthur and Marcus walked together through the quiet, humming factory floor. Machine 7 operated smoothly in the background, a perpetual symbol of what happens when truth triumphs over greed and real talent is finally given its rightful place. Marcus's story serves as a timeless reminder that genius exists everywhere, often hidden beneath humble circumstances. When leaders choose to open their eyes and look past bias, they unlock extraordinary potential that can transform the world forever. What did you think of Marcus's incredible journey? If this story inspired you to stand up for integrity and chase your dreams regardless of the odds, please hit the like button, leave your thoughts in the comments below, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more incredible stories.